I found that there weren't a lot of sociologists looking at the connection between how police misconduct and the racism that we see in police misconduct was linked to the court system. And I was there for a decade, and I was able to collect enough data over the course of that decade through multiple different ways to show that prosecutors in some ways were enabling police misconduct. When you're studying powerful people like prosecutors, judges, and defense attorneys in Chicago, you better have a lot of evidence, empirical evidence, about how these violations of power and this level of racism is operating. I went in as an ethnographer, and I went into the field site and collected data within the prosecutor's office, being the law clerk. In that setting, because I was such a light-skinned Chicana, they thought me to be white, and that gave me particularly powerful access to see how white professionals, both judges, prosecutors, and defense attorneys, talked about people of color when they thought a person of color was not in the room. I also did 100 interviews with judges, prosecutors, public defenders, and defense attorneys. And then what I did is I had 130 researchers from the local universities around Chicago kind of go in disguise, if you will, in plain clothes. They wore jeans and hoodies, and they kind of disguised as the everyday people that would walk into the court. They were both observers, and they kind of take notes on any of the types of violations that I was seeing. It may not be much of a surprise that the researchers of color, even with all their elite education, were often mistaken for defendants. And many of them didn't want to go back because the sense of abuse, the loss of dignity, to be mistaken for a defendant, a criminal, meant that that racial label was much more powerful than any diploma or education or anything they could possibly do. I had prosecutors speaking in overtly racist ways. They were laughing at black-sounding names. They were making fun of defendants using Ebonics or Black English vernacular. They knew often that suspects were brought in dead, and the police officers' stories didn't make sense. In one case, of 15 years old, a young black girl was sitting next to her mother, and she was fiddling with her cell phone, as most teenagers do, and the sheriffs pointed through this bulletproof glass that separated the public from the professionals in the court, and they actually pulled her daughter into the lockup where they held defendants. This was a child. What was extremely powerful is that 3 court watchers saw this at the same time. And that is the power of empirical research, is that you have multiple people looking at the same site, seeing the same things, and writing their observations. I realized that the culture of prosecutors and police was one of prosecutors giving reverence to police officers. And the reason is police officers were extremely powerful. If a prosecutor challenged a police officer and questioned them on a brutality case or questioned them when their suspect was dead, they actually could stop coming for cases. They would do almost like a silent strike. And those prosecutors would be in some ways informally punished, kind of under the radar. And so when we think about the larger issues of police brutality, police misconduct, and the fact that we're not seeing any of these officers held accountable, behind the scenes is an engine, a legal system, if you will, that's allowing these police officers to feel protected, emboldened to engage in this level of racial violence because they know that in some ways they're powerful enough to control it. And these were the incidents that were happening, not just in one year, not just in one courtroom, but they were happening across the courthouse in general, all 25 courtrooms in the largest court system in America.
I ain't going to jail. Are y'all serious right now?
Without prosecutors and judges, you wouldn't have the type of police misconduct. You need those legal actors to in some ways embolden police misconduct on the street.
What? Are you serious right now? Oh. Are you serious? Oh my God, are you serious right now?
And so the idea of linking these two and actually holding the prosecutor accountable for that was a really powerful thing, and a way that sociologists can make a contribution to this public discourse on criminal justice reform.